Hello and welcome to ReginaldESQ. I'm Underhook, and this is the next in my series looking at the armor changes in patch 9.9 World of Tanks. So today we're looking at the VK36.01H Tier 6 German heavy tank. I reviewed this tank a while ago. I really like this tank. Basically it has the same hull armor as the Tiger with, I believe, a superior turret to the Tiger, and it's a tier lower. Beast of a tanker side scraping in its tier. Really good tank. Anyway, they have, overall, I believe they've nerfed it. Now, if I was a cynic, I would say that they have just introduced the Japanese tier 6 Tiger, which you can pay for, which is inferior to this tank until now, because they've just nerfed it. If I was cynical, I could say that, but I'm not cynical, so I won't say that. So on the right hand side of your screen is the 9.8 version of the VK36.01H, which I recorded in Tank Inspector. On the left hand side of your screen is the live version 9.9 Tank Inspector. So I'll start playing the replay, and then we'll colorize this one as well. We'll try and line it up about the same. Looks about the same there. And okay, now where am I with this cursor here? Okay, basically the lower plate armor there is the same value as it used to be, which is 60mm. However, it is now a smaller section. Why is it smaller? Because they have made the lower plate itself bigger. It is now a bigger area to shoot at, which is a bad thing, because that's what most people shoot at on Tigers and VKs, is that lower plate. So that lower plate is now more, well, it's a bigger target area, which is not good. However, that lower plate is the same. It was a 100mm and is still 100mm. Now it has had a buff. This area you can see here is, if I take it off colorized view, is the tracks, and the tracks now count as additional armor. So it's not spaced armor, doesn't count as spaced armor, although it probably should, but it counts as additional armor, which is 115mm of armor in total. So instead of 100 there, it's now 115. So they've made it a bigger target area, but they've given us some additional armor there. Now, so probably these are the areas you want to aim for on this tank if you can, when you're aiming at the lower plate. So continuing on the replay here until we get to the upper plate here, the weaker upper plate, you can see here that it is still 60mm, but it's, I'm not sure if the angling has increased. Let me just turn this down a bit more. I would say the angle actually has increased on this, and it's basically a ricochet now where it wasn't before. So I think maybe that's part of the reason this lower plate is now bigger. They've increased the depth and the height of it, making this a sharper angle, which is kind of good, but kind of not good, because people don't normally shoot that anyway because of the extreme angle. They normally shoot the lower plate. Anyway, let's continue on, and we can just see here this blue section, which is designed, I believe, to protect the driver, has actually increased in thickness. It was 50mm of spaced, basically spaced armor. It's now 60mm of spaced armor. I didn't really notice it getting penetrated anyway, since it is additional armor to everywhere else in the tank. So it doesn't really mean much as far as I'm concerned. The upper plate here, the frontal plate, is still 100mm. They've just removed the sort of contouring from around the machine gun, so it's not as vulnerable from the side, that machine gun port, anymore. So they have eliminated a bit of a weakness there, but other than that, it's no change to that frontal plate area. Now moving up to the turret, we can see the lower part of the turret here was 100mm and is still 100mm, so no real change there, although they have simplified the armor a little bit. When we get onto the side part of the turret there, it did reduce to 80mm in the bottom corners. It's now a consistent 100mm, so you could call that a little bit of a buff. Not many people probably aim for that area anyway, since it was pretty risky. Now we get into the mantlet armor. We're sort of right on the corner there. You can see that actually, let's just play this a little bit more, and I'll turn the tank a little bit more so we're looking at the same thing. So you can see here we had 100mm overlaying 60mm underneath, and that basically is still the same. And now let's progress a little bit more. And around about this area, you can see that it was 135 mils in that area there. Well, it's now just 100 mils. They've sort of simplified the armor design a little bit. Anyway, let's have a little bit more of a look. So the armor's pretty similar, 100/60 there, still 100/60. However, where they've nerfed it is when it gets close to the gun. So it used to be 135, now it's just 100. So there was a square sort of an area around the gun which was 135. That's been removed and it's all just 100 now. So actually pretty much this area here, I'll show you at the end because I'll go back to the non-colorized view and you'll see what I'm talking about. But basically there's been a little bit of a nerf to that area, which is a bit of a worry. Now the major nerf on this tank has come from the cupola. So the cupola was, and still is for most of it, 80mm, which is fantastic for a cupola, really well armored cupola. But it did get shot a lot at because the rest of everything else they had to shoot at was at least 100 mils, so people did go for the cupola. So being 80 mils consistently was the good thing. Well, the height of the cupola is probably still about the same. It's still pretty high, but the top part of the cupola, as you can see here now, is only 50mm. So it does make that now quite vulnerable and a severe weakness. Now that 80mm cupola was one of the key advantages over the Tiger, which was a tier higher in the armor there, and was a key advantage over the new tier 6 Japanese Tiger. But now maybe not so much because they've reduced that top bit there, which yeah, is annoying for lovers of this tank. Let's continue on the replay now and have a look at I think we're going to do side armor now, and the side armor is basically unchanged at 60mm except for the blue area you see there where I'm going to blue. That acted as actually not that section of it. Let's go back a little bit so you can see it. That area there was actually 60mm overlaying the 60, or that whole area, I think it's the engineering tank, has been removed now. So it's just a consistent 60, there's not 60/60. I mean, people only would have shot it by accident anyway, so it's probably not really much of a nerf. The rest of the arm, the side of the turret armor, is still 80mm as it once was. The cupola is still 80 from the side except for that top bit, which as we said is now 50, which is not good. The rear of the tank is still 60mm and that's unchanged. Rear of the turret is still 80mm, that's also unchanged. And the top deck of the tank is and was 25mm. There's been no changes there. So it's really just the changes to the frontal armor and the turret armor, and the essential change is the top of the cupola, which is, you would have to say, overall a nerf, I believe, because of that essential change there. And this is what I want to show you. This square section here, as you can see on the non-colorized view now, was 135 mils. Well, that's been removed and it's now just a consistent 100 mils all over the front, around that gun area there. So that's also a nerf. So I guess the only real buff we've had is the additional track armor to the lower plate, but considering the lower plate is now bigger and the removal of the 135 around the gun and now the terrible 50 mils at the top of the cupola, overall it's a nerf to the tank. I hope you enjoyed this armor review, and if you did, please give it a thumbs up. If you'd like to see more, subscribe to ReginaldESQ. Have fun!